Hey, Adam. Hey, Clinton.
Howdy.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, everybody sounds good.
Yeah, that's doesn't feel right.
I mean, you sound okay.
Oh, okay. There we go. That feels more right.
All right, going live in 1 minute.
Wonderful.
Hello and welcome to the Seahawkers podcast, a Wednesday live episode, UnCatfished, with my good buddies Clinton Bonner and Adam Emmert. Adam, how you doing, man?
Oh, just hanging in. A couple nice, really sunshiny days here in Montana. So nice to get some things done outside, even if you're knee deep in mud. It's been a good time. Plus, we got some news and free agency and everything. Team's starting to take shape, and I think that's pretty fun. I know, Clinton, you're excited about some of the signings here.
Absolute rain out here in Connecticut, so there will be mud is what follows that. So we have a 5K coming up this Saturday. It's like sunshine, sunshine, sunshine. Rains today. 5K that I got a DJ on Saturday, and it's like 42 degrees and rain. So looking ugly, but I am excited to talk free agency because that will brighten my day. How about you, Brandon?
I'm doing well. Hey, we've got almost 50 people in here hanging out. Be sure and hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We're going live on Wednesday, which we are going to shoot for Thursday. We've got a conflict this week. So that way, if you are subscribed, then you can get those notifications that we're going live. You can join us here and celebrate in the chat like Carly Perkins is saying. I don't think there's a free agency move that beats the Aaron Donald retiring news. And I think that Carly's right. I don't know, other than, keeping Tyler Lockett on the team. Carly and I, we might agree that may be the best free agency move. But Aaron Donald retiring, right up there.
Oh, that's as exciting as it gets right there. The reign of terror is over. Thank goodness for that. A great player, did a lot of amazing things throughout his career. Seems like a decent dude on top of all of that. Hard to be completely mad at him. But at the end of the day, I am not going to be sad not seeing him wind up across Nick Harris. So.
For sure. My favorite reaction was Gino's when Gino sent out like a congratulations on the awesome career, and some Seahawks fan sent him like, you mean this thug ? With like Donald like plowing down on Gino's face, and Gino responded with like, yeah, bro, it's football or something like that. It's like, yeah, bro.
Yeah.
It's like, it's football. I'm like, thank you, Gino. Thank you. That we don't need to flag every single time that a quarterback gets hit hard. And sayonara, have a good life, Aaron Donald. That was a decade. And I ran into a Rams fan. He happens to be a butcher at the one in Connecticut. So the Ram fan in Connecticut, maybe there's a per state quota, perhaps. And he was actually a butcher at a local supermarket. He was all torn up about it, boys. He was all torn up. He was very happy about Colby Parkinson, and he was going on a bit like, oh yeah, here's a really great blocker. I'm like, he's really tall. So I don't know about great blocker. I think maybe useful. But it was funny how that news travels, and like the thing he picks up is, oh man, I hear he's really big and here's a great blocker. I'm like, one of those things is absolutely accurate. So very funny.
Colby Parkinson, very tall. So yes, they add Colby Parkinson, they subtract Aaron Donald, and yeah. So if you're a Seahawks fan complaining about the team not getting better, hey, look at the Rams. They got significantly worse with that news, and yeah, I think that also improves the Seahawks in at least 2 games this season, that they don't have to worry about that. But hey, we do have some news that we have our own big guy up the middle and featured in the graphic that Clinton Bonner worked on for this episode. And it is the news that big man Jonathan Hankins coming to the Seahawks from the Dallas Cowboys. Clinton, I know that you, because you have an affinity for large men that anchor the middle of the defense. I don't know why that's a thing, but it's true. And Jonathan Hankins, now maybe your new favorite big man in Seattle.
Yeah, right away, right? Dead smack in the middle. I love how they portray him as 320. Yeah, right. 320, he is not, which is great. The more beef, the better. And just like everybody else, I've got some good Cowboys fans that, the friends that are Cowboys fans. And I asked them, I said, hey, what's your gut on that dude? And his answer, this great dude named OPP, is my fantasy football partner for many, many years. We win a lot. But his quote was, he's not going to show up in the stat sheet too much. You will never, ever miss him on tape, though. Because he's always evident on tape. He's always disruptive. He's hands up. We don't bat balls down. You go watch Hankins's, for the Flanders's Hankins's, highlight reel, and he's batting passes down, getting his big paws up there, causing havoc. So yeah, I'm excited. A player that can keep linebackers clean, do his job, which I think is a continuous theme with what Macdonald is, I think, striving for, and just that big beef up the middle that we did not have last year. Adam, are you in on Mr. Hanky?
Look, I've always liked Jonathan Hankins. I've thought he's been a good player pretty much everywhere he's been. And you go and you look at PFF stats, and it looks like he's been pretty good up until about his last season and a half there with Vegas, and then they had him fairly lowly ranked with Dallas, and it was like, well, okay. I mean, again, PFF grain of salt type stuff. You talked about in our text thread, Clinton, that you wanted to get to like some of our favorite things in free agency, in favorite moves, things like that. This is the one. Like, this makes me so happy on the inside, I can barely even talk about it. How many times have I gotten on this pod and just whined and complained about not having enough size up the middle? This is that guy. You pair him with Jay Reed and Leo and maybe Mike Moe inside. We'll see what Macdonald does with him. If he sticks to the Pete Carroll plan or he puts him back outside like he was in Michigan. Cam Young as another additional piece there. And all of a sudden, that defensive line, I feel a lot better about that right now at this time this year than I did at this time last year by a lot.
Which is kind of funny, Brandon, because he went through about 4 or 5 players, didn't even mention the splashiest free agent from last year. So what do you think? What do you think about the unit that is now like that front four?
The defensive line, I do feel okay about, and want to recognize our live executive producer, Ryan 911, coming in with a $9.99 super chat. Go Hawks, Ryan!
Thank you,
thanks
Ryan.
Thanks to Ryan. Thanks to the near 100 people that we've got in here. So, yes, as far as the line goes, Draymond Jones in the middle, Jaron Reed. You got Jonathan Hankins. The question about Mike Moe, where he'd be. Daryl Taylor coming back to the team on the outer edges of the front four, along with Mafe, Leonard. They have Leonard Williams as a defensive end. Well, I suppose, yeah, in a 3-4 defensive end, you got Leonard Williams, Draymond Jones, and then Jaron Reed and Jonathan Hankins as the nose tackles in that kind of lineup. Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. And in fact, I feel good about the middle. And now my concerns are more with the edges. And are they going to be able to consistently get a pass rush? You hope that Uchenna Nwosu can come back. You hope that Boye Mafe can build off of last season. They were targeting a pass rusher in free agency, one from the Jets. And it sounded like, where did he go to? Or no, he went to the Jets.
Is that Huff or who?
Huff,
who
yeah.
Yeah.
Huff was a pass rusher that, or at least said that he met with the Seahawks, whether or not that they were super serious about that or not. But it does feel like there could be some improvement to the pass rush. But I think there's other areas of the defense that I'm more concerned about now than the defensive line.
So where are those? Adam, where do you think they are? What's Brandon alluding to, you think?
Oh, it's still got to be linebacker. I mean, you did bring in Jerome Baker. Okay. They brought in the kid from the Bills, right? Tyler Dodson. Yeah. And, okay, those are moves, and they're kind of unproven moves to a degree. And maybe those are guys that Mike thinks that he can get the best out of. You mentioned, I forgot Draymond there, Clinton, and it's because that season was relatively forgettable for Draymond, considering the amount of money that he was signed for. But defensive line looking strong. I've liked the DBs for a good long time. And then I don't know if I were to guess for Brandon, I was going to say linebacker, but maybe it's safety for him here still.
I think because I think linebacker is one of those areas where, like you said, Jerome Baker, you go out, there's guys like him out there that I think that even you can sign for less, but Jerome Baker, not a Pro Bowl caliber player, but a really good player. And,
Pretty good,
much like with the Jonathan Hankins signing, you can gauge some of it too, based off of fan reaction, and Dolphins fans were a little bit sad that they were losing Jerome Baker. Of course, if you've ever seen the video of Baker, he was mic'd up for one game where he couldn't find his mom in the stands. And I think I think that video, that mic'd up video, it drew a lot of Dolphins fans in. So they really liked. I think he was one of those guys that just everybody liked. And I think I even saw a Dolphins fan saying that they would take Baker back rather than the signing, that because they got the former Seahawks linebacker down there.
Brooks,
and Jordan Brooks, not they may be willing to trade back, but Baker, injuries were part of the reason why he had kind of he's had injuries kind of throughout his career. I think he's played, I don't know, between 11 and 16 games most seasons though, so it's not terrible. But
No.
Linebacker, not as much a concern. Safety, I think, for me is the big concern, because I just with the way it's setting up, I'm worried about this team getting beat deep down the middle.
Well, and I think let's get to safety in a second. I do want to comment also back on the linebackers too. There's been some really good coverage, specifically around Dodson, about like what he is and what he isn't. And while the Buffalo Bills fans that I chatted with are like, yeah, he's solid. He's an interesting player, really good in the run game, maybe a little bit, left to be desired in the coverage game. And then PFF's grades are like that he's at like this outstanding cover person. But then when you listen to a couple of different podcasts about him, it's like he didn't play third and long. They literally took him off the field, and they would move Poyer down into like a linebacker position, which, by the way, makes this little smoke around the potential of Jamal Adams coming back to just play this linebacker spot, maybe in these third down situations. It's at least intriguing. I see.
No.
I'm saying for pod fodder, for Potter, right? For the sake of talking about it, it's interesting. But PFF making it seem like this dude is a phenomenal cover guy. Well, that's because he's literally not on the field in third and long. So it'll be interesting to see, what does Seattle think about his skill set there, and can he be a 3-down linebacker, or is it, hey, first, second down, and then we got to swap you out? That'll be pretty interesting, I think, dudes.
Going to be a lot of interesting matchups there. Not only was Jamal rumored about the idea of maybe coming back, but Quandre saying that it is not impossible for him to come back to the Seahawks. And, who knows, but maybe it was, you release him, he goes out, tests the waters, see if what the number John wanted him to come back at is something commiserate to something that he'd be excited about. I mean, that's a possibility, but Julian Love and Kayvon Wallace, I don't know that that's a terrible tandem. I mean, Kayvon's a young player and looks to be on the rise to a degree. So that would be pretty neat. But if he can continue that path under Mike Macdonald, I don't know about Jamal coming back for playing third downs, dude. That's the last down I want him out there on, man. He gets smoked in coverage. That makes zero sense whatsoever. No, thank you.
I didn't say it was a good idea. I just said it was out there in the, where there's some Jamal smoke, there may be some fire. Guys, I don't know much about Kayvon Wallace. I really don't. So what do we know? Like, Brandon, do you have any info on him, or any, insights / what's the rumors about him as a player? Seems like a lot of different signings happened, and he's kind of been like the low person on the pole of like not getting that much coverage or love. Like, what do I need to know?
I don't know if there's anything that you really need to know. The reason why you haven't heard a lot of him is that he doesn't really move the needle as far as signings go. It's just he's kind of a depth piece, and a guy who's, gosh, he's played, I think, 5 or 6 years in the NFL, played for the Eagles, played for the Titans. I did see some Titans fans who kind of lamenting wanting their team to have him. Play for the Cardinals for a little bit too. But as far as a guy, I mean, when you look at his stats, and he's played in the league 6 years and has 1 pick and maybe 8 total passes defensed in his entire career, I think that tells you about how much he's around the ball. And yeah, I think a backup level player is probably where he's at. Adam,
the thing that stood out to me when looking at his PFF stuff was the tackling. He's an excellent tackler.
Yeah.
That made me really happy. That's something that I think that the Seahawks could use a lot of, except for when he was in Arizona. And I mean, everybody stinks when they go down there. So,
yeah, I wasn't looking for a whole lot of his highlight reel coming from Arizona. Did have a question here in the chat from Cameron Robinson. Was there any player that Coach Mike coached last year that rose up to Pro Bowl material? And it's interesting that you asked that, because I mean, one, the Pro Bowl, as far as the voting goes, make of it what you will. But they had let's see, the Ravens had 2 Pro Bowlers. They had Roquan Smith, who you could argue that he was already a Pro Bowler before he came to the Ravens, and then Marlon Humphrey was a backup corner for the defense, and I feel like he's played pretty well before Mike too. So I don't know if you have any guys who you could say rose up to Pro Bowl level, but I think the thing that stands out when you look at the Ravens last season is that they had a lot of guys that were kind of toward the tail end of their career that came in and they filled really important roles at a high level, and you got a lot out of those kind of mid-tier players.
Yeah, whether that's Van Noy or Clowney having what was his best statistical season under Macdonald, and others as well. And I think that's, and if you look at the signings we've made as well, it kind of goes along with, I think last time I gave the analogy of, can Macdonald pull this inside straight again? Maybe he can. Maybe that this is his jam. He goes after certain traits and values certain things and wants to bring the team up to a certain floor. Because I keep repeating that I believe he's way more of a Belichick style coach. He's like, do your job. And if you try and go freelance, you will end up on the bench. If you don't tackle with purpose, you will end up on the bench. And I think that's how he's going to rule. And the signings kind of point to that. So hopefully maybe the floor of this team has been raised on defense. And interestingly enough, I think it was Josh DeHuman in our Discord who kind of laid out the defense. And at the very end of it, he's like, this defense seems fast to me. Like that was the categorization, like that we got faster. I hope that's accurate, because there were times last year where middle of the field felt like a bit of a slog. So that I think, will we feel it? Will we really feel and jump off the screen as a much faster team? I mean, we don't know yet, but Adam, just looking at the roster moves, what do you think?
I think the idea of him taking guys that are closer to the end of their career, who maybe haven't had the best last couple seasons, and then getting the best out of them, is what made me so fired up about the Hankins signing. It was like, oh my gosh, if he could get a legit nose tackle in the 3-4 to play at a high level, the way that they brought him in, for not a crap ton of money, like that would be amazing. What a big difference, because I am so sick of getting killed in the run game, and whether that's just poor tackling or maybe being slow at linebacker or whatever it is. It felt to me a lot of size in the middle was really the problem, and getting the most out of guys there. And so that had me fired up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah. Well, with that signing too, it makes you think that, because we saw Leonard Williams getting a lot of double teams last year.
Yeah.
And so if those double teams are now going to Hankins, because he's, that's the dude that you have to double, or else he's going to move the pocket back, then it opens things up that maybe you can get a little bit more pressure with Williams having those single matchups rather than double teams. And Yeah, that intrigues me a little bit, and then that frees up Draymond Jones potentially, and yeah, it has an impact that kind of goes throughout the defense.
Yeah, for sure. Like at the second level of keeping your linebackers clean. And if you go watch a little bit of the Dodson film, he is a very good, he's like an instinctive run guy. Just, bad words there, but that's what he is. He's quite just not, he just little subtle things, and he sees where it's going and he's filling the hole. He's just like, again, over and over, like quite instinctive. Like he knows where to be. And guess what? If you got the big beefy boys right in the middle who are taking up two people, and then you could see what you got to go do, and you have a lane to go do it, and guards are not getting to a second level because that guy's doing his job. It systematically sets things up for a dude like Dodson who has a particular skill set. And maybe it is only first and second down, but guess what? First and second down matter a whole lot in the NFL, right? And we many times last year we were sitting in what, guys? 2nd and 2, 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4 after they ran the ball for 4, 5, 6, 7 yards on first down. Adam, you'd refer to that as getting jellied, and I think the Hankins effect and that matriculation upfield, downfield can be really sincere. So does he have an injury history? Do we know about, has he been for the most part healthy? I mean, he's an older player now, but has he stayed healthy for the majority of his career?
I don't think he's been dealing with any major injuries as far as I know.
Yeah. Nothing on my radar or anything like that. I'm curious, fellas, of all the signings here, is there one that you're the most disappointed in at this point?
Ooh. Or whether
Anywhere,
it's offense or
the
defense.
entire team. Yeah, what? All four of the guys
Well,
on
there's
offense,
nothing really
right?
on offense
Like,
to be disappointed about. The Rayshon Jenkins one is probably the one that comes to mind for me, just because I don't quite understand. It just, he's so much like Julian Love, and when I put up the depth chart earlier, that's coming from our lads, and they have Jenkins at strong safety and Love at free safety, which I guess you could flip flop either one, because going back to Jenkins, the first half of the season he played half the season at free safety, and they moved him around, flip flopped him. So I'm curious if that's a strategic thing or if there's more moves to be made at safety, and that's where I have my biggest question. I already talked about that.
Yeah. I'll chime in, Adam, and then you probably got one. Maybe I'm taking yours off the board. For me, I think it's actually Noah Fant. It's a combination of spending pretty good money, 10 million per, over 10 million per. And while I like the Pharaoh Brown signing behind him, I really think that's a pretty darn solid tight end too. I just have my concerns with predictability when Fant's on the field in certain formations. And Macdonald's whole thing on defense is, you don't know what we're going to do. We're going to present these different fronts, and at the snap of the ball, different dudes are doing different things almost every single time, and we're going to confuse the heck out of you while we somehow stay sound. And that's kind of the scheme in a nutshell. Offensively, I don't know if we get that multiple look with Fant and we could still run the ball effectively in 11 personnel. I just have my doubts. I have my doubts. And for that reason, that's the one that I'm still most disappointed in. That's it. What about you though?
I think that you're disappointed with Noah Fant coming back because he's going to sucker you into 1,000 bad bets on prop stars throughout the season, like he did last year. I think that's really where the problem lies here. For me, guys, it's the kid from the Rams, the guard, Antrim.
Yeah,
losing Dame Lou, and then this is the guy that you're bringing in to replace him. You better be drafting a dude like. At this point, not knowing where we're going in the draft and that sort of thing, that's one a career backup guy like to come in and play guard. I don't know. That one bugs me. As excited as I am as to them taking the trenches seriously on defense, this feels like John Schneider being like, "Hey, guards are a dime a dozen. Who cares? Just get a guy."
He said that as much.
I know.
Yeah, he does. He does like to repeat that, right? I do wonder if that's the okey doke of all okey dokes, so that when we get to the draft, I don't know if he's thinking these
I
things.
don't think so. Have you watched his interior
I
offensive line moves like off season after off season?
yeah
This is his
yeah,
MO at this
Zero
point.
shits
yeah
given.
yeah for 14 years, yeah,
Yeah.
and we just saw Evan Brown walk away for like whatever 2.35 million. Now I realize we basically got the clone. What was the guy from
Nick
the
Harris.
Browns? Nick Harris,
Nick
right?
Harris, yeah.
So yeah, so like okay, that is this year's Evan Brown. Maybe, but sometimes bird in hand and knowing what you had for 2.35 million might be worth shelling it out. And again, you never know, just does a player want to stay or not? But Evan Brown, I thought was a pretty okay NFL center, best one we had in a number of years. So that was an interesting swap with
Yeah,
Jermaine.
well, you know what?
Yeah,
Just to pile on what Adam and you both said,
yeah.
man, if you could take the money that you spent on Noah Fant and have used that to keep Damian Lewis at guard, hey, I think that fixes a couple different things.
Maybe the grub
Yes.
offense is going to be a lot more tight end centric with the passing game. I mean, and if that's the case, then Noah Fant's a nice fit for that.
Yeah. Well, I would tell you what would be a really nice fit would have been spending the money on Delu, as Brandon's suggesting. And then as number 16 rolls around, you take Brock Bowers at 16, and you already got Dame Lou, and you don't got to take a guard. And then all of a sudden you got the most dynamic.
Brock's not really a blocking tight. If you
No,
don't like Noah Fant as a blocking tight end, then why would you want Bowers to take a spot?
Because he could play differently than Fant. He could play halfback. He is a different type of even better athlete and better, playmaker than Noah Fant has proven to be in the NFL at this point. Fant had great pedigree and in first round pick.
Well, you can still do that with Bowers then.
Yes, it'd be more exciting. That's the answer. That's why, Brandon, it'd be more exciting.
He ain't getting past the Chargers.
Where do the Chargers draft? 12 or no? That's the
They're
Broncos.
at 9.
They're at 9. Well,
higher than us.
The Chargers
Right.
need wide. Chargers just got rid of all their wide receivers too. So if Rome is sitting there at 9, I don't think they're passing up on Rome. Or Neighbors maybe still there. I don't think they're passing up on one of those big three.
When has Harbaugh ever cared about having legit receivers?
You need some. They just
no. He always just rolls out dudes. He's basically the John Schneider of guards. Like when it comes to wide receivers, like he has the same mindset. They're overpaid. Whatever. Just put some guys out there.
Yeah. Well, don't crush my Bowers to Seattle at 16 dreams too early, please. That's all I ask.
AZ Hawker saying, I like the Sam Howell signing, but losing positioning in round 3 and round 5 in the draft wasn't great. Perhaps a move that pays off in 2025, but not liking that too much for this year. It was interesting that you had the Howell signing and then you had because you're going, well, geez, all these moves have been made after the Howell move. Then the Eagles, they go and they get Kenny Pickett, and that opens things up then for Justin Fields to go to the Steelers for a 6th round pick that could potentially be a 4. So it wasn't even a 6th rounder this year. It was a 6th rounder in 2025 and has the potential to be a 4th rounder based on starting time. It did bring up that conversation of which one would you rather have, and each one comes with its pros and cons, right? Like Justin Fields is maybe a more dynamic player than Sam Howell. I think that's probably pretty easy to say, but he also only has 1 year under contract and is probably going to be looking for a new deal after this year. So with Sam Howell, you have him under contract for 2 years. He's a backup. And yes, people, Sam Howell's the backup. I think as much as there was weirdness around Geno and Drew Lock, because that was the question, right? Is, oh, well, they're talking like Drew's still on the team and going into free agency. And looking back on that in hindsight, I wonder if it was them talking up Drew so that way he could look a little bit more appealing in free agency, potentially. They seem to talk up their own guys that way. So coming out of that, though, John Schneider on the radio and asked if Sam Howell's going to come in and compete for the starting job, and he essentially swats it down saying Geno's the starter. And then they press him on it. Like, well, you're like, he's not going to compete at all. And he's like, well, Sam's a competitive guy. I'm sure he's going to compete for the job, but Geno Smith's the quarterback.
Yeah. Look, I'll repeat what I said when we talked about this in the last show I was on. The Sam Howell move is a giant puddle of meh. Like, he's just a dude. Listen to John talk. He doesn't talk about him as a quarterback. He just kept saying, well, he's a football player. He's a football player. And no, he's not really going to compete with Geno, all that stuff. He's a placeholder in case they weren't able to get one of the quarterbacks that they fancy in this draft. I'm not even saying one of the top guys. Maybe it's somebody on the back end of the draft that they're excited about, that they feel like, well, there's a possibility we can get him, but if we miss out, we want to have, somebody there that can come in and, run the offense a little bit and be a decent backup. And that's Sam Howell, and it's fine. I'm not mad about it. I don't think it's a terrible trade or anything like that. I don't think it's a great one either. It's just, meh.
Is it worth those picks though? Like AZ Hawker was saying,
Dropping
to move back in round 3 and 5, and I think when we talked about it, it was an equivalent of an early 4. But you don't lose picks, which is the nice thing. You have the same amount of picks, so there's that side of it. But also, moving out of the 3rd round early. Well, you still have 1 3rd-round pick, but not the most ideal.
I think for me, a valuable kind of thought experiment around this was, okay, we have the bias of seeing Sam Howell for 2 years. He's still super young. And there was that graphic FanDuel put up that for every meaningful stat, he's outperformed stat wise Josh Allen for 2 years. Okay. Hey,
but they left off Josh Allen's rushing yards off of that graphic
for some reason.
And left out that Josh Allen was on a rushing team those first couple of years, and Sam Howell was under Eric Bieniemy, and they threw the ball 5,000 times a game. But totally equivalent in their first couple of years.
Not even equivalent. Sam Howell was clearly better by that graphic.
Clearly
right?
Better. My God.
By that graphic.
If you measure in yards, he's clearly better.
Yeah. See, I measure shit in reality, Clinton. And that's so, he's not clearly better.
To continue the thought experiment, what I did in my brain was, I'm like, all right, what if you were just to say, okay, if you didn't know Sam Howell, right, and he's 23, so he's still like right in the pocket of what quarterbacks are aged now coming out, and you just put the name in. You know what? With the 3rd pick, they drafted Spencer Rattler, and they had to give up a 5th in some wacky way. So they Spencer Rattler and a 5th, and they got back a 4th and a 6th. So you got the dude, you got the quarterback. In this case, not 4 years, 2 years. I understand there's nuances here, but you got the dude you were probably going to draft with that double up in the 3rd round, maybe. If you can get, if your dude's still there, if a guy like Rattler's still hanging around, all right, you get a guy that you probably think is equivalent talent-wise. Cool. Still super young. And then you're getting a 5th and a 6th, a 4th and a 6th, and, jettisoning a 5th. If you look at it just straight that way, I think the move makes a lot of sense. And I'm not going to look at 2 years of Sam Howell in 2 broken offenses and then be like, the dude has no shot at playing, because I saw him make some really great throws also. Can he, and the 2 year period, by the way, versus Justin Fields having 1 year, I think that extra year is invaluable given the arc and what we probably will get from Geno. So I think that 1 more year buffer is really valuable. Then you say, we just save $4 million over the Drew Lock, $5 million to $1 million, and that goes somewhere. I put all those things in the same blender and go, that's a logical deal. Now, can Sam Howell be worth anything? I think we'll see. Adam, I know how you feel about it, but I seen the dude make some throws that excited me.
Well, okay. I think I need to clarify this just a little bit. Like, in terms of like trading for Sam Howell and like, he's probably going to be your QB of the future. No. Is it possible? Because you're right. There's been a couple flashes here and there. No doubt about it. Maybe learning under Geno for a couple years, finds an offense that fits him, all that. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. I just think it's a smaller probability. In terms of, you were using Spencer Rattler as like, well, maybe they pick up Rattler instead of Sam Howell, right? Like, and kind of doing the mental gymnastics there. I'm thrilled to have Sam Howell over Spencer Rattler. That dude's tape is a hot mess. Like, that's a fat no thank you.
So even better for the mental trade. Yes. I was jockeying Brandon.
Yeah, and when I think of in terms of talent, I like Sam Howell better than what we got out of Drew Lock. I think he can. Yeah, I see Adam. You kind of maybe half a dozen one way. Yeah,
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 6 to 1, half
similar,
dozen the other.
similar.
Yeah, I'm with you.
and maybe Drew Lock has a great arm, but yeah, Sam Howell has a good arm too. And I don't know if man, if you put Drew Lock in that commander system and asked him to throw that many times, he probably throws as many picks as Sam Howell did too.
Oh, yeah.
So
Mhm.
I think just about any quarterback that throws with that kind of volume, 3%, not terrible for interception rate. But I think there's talent there. I think, but I think it, man, Seahawks fans are going to be so confused though. The ones that really like backup quarterbacks, because it's going to be another guy that you can root for and hope gets in there. And I guess in that regard, I'm not looking forward to that part of it. I would really like this defined line of starting quarterback, backup quarterback, and those graphics that Clinton you're hanging on to aren't doing Gino any help.
Well, I think any, so it's funny. I listened to a couple different fantasy football podcasts, and one of them is like Pro Football Focus. And their thing today, they were going over like free agency, just the big moves in free agency. And they talked about the Sam Howell deal. And then one of the analysts, he's like, well, I don't know if this cements Sam Howell as a starter in Seattle, but it's pretty evident he might be. And the other guy starts to buy into it a bit too. And there was 3 guys on it. I'm sitting there going, is that the narrative out there? Is that, I mean, dude, and then the one dude was like, yeah, but he actually rattled off stats about Gino being a pretty darn good and above average quarterback and kind of put it to bed. But that's
That
pretty
narrative
crazy.
is out there. It's
That's
out
crazy. But it's not in the Pacific Northwest. I don't think.
there. Oh, it is.
It's not in a fever
I don't think
pitch.
the overwhelming amount of fans feel that way. That's for sure.
I think more felt that way about Drew than do about Sam, and the percentage wise of kicking him out. I think it's a little more because of where they came in, and Sam just threw 21 interceptions. But I happen to agree that's not necessarily a bad symbol of a, but that doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. He threw the ball a ton down a lot on a pretty not great team. So it's just interesting. I think we have a good backup quarterback right now on the cheap.
And the interesting thing about Sam Howell, we can talk about all the passing stats all you want, but his running ability is the one thing that I'm like, ooh, okay, that's something that he does bring a little differently to the table. A big physical runner. And especially as a backup quarterback, if you're feeling overwhelmed in the moment and you don't get a lot of reps and you get thrown in a game, having your legs to be able to rely on in those moments is a big deal. It can help get you out of some stuff. And I think that's a nice element for him.
Well, going back to the draft and this offensive depth chart, Adam, I noticed you mentioned the left guard signing as one of the disappointing ones. I have concerns about the middle of this offensive line. So if there's areas for the Seahawks to draft in, I think all of us who are doing mock drafts are probably leaning heavy on that interior of the offensive line, maybe a little linebacker, maybe a little safety. But yeah, it's got to be O-line. And man, oh man, I hope that's where they intend to put some draft capital coming up here in April.
You and me both, brother. Yeah. Let's shore up the offensive line, the defensive line coming together. You start in the trenches, you build from the inside out. And at that point, really your biggest thing that you're overcoming are a lot of very young coaches in first-time positions and just that experience gap. But honestly, if you're turning the page and you're going young and you're making that move, I like the way the roster is going for the most part to this point. As long as in the draft, that offensive line, the interior offensive line is focused on heavily.
Yeah, the Hankins piece was such a keystone to making this all feel better. So like, okay, I feel a lot better now, which is just amazing, right? One player, but it did for me. It did that, which is cool. Hopefully it comes to fruition in on the field too. we as Seahawks fans, for the ones that don't want us to draft a quarterback 16, I think we have to like root for 5 QBs to go before pick 16. And it's possible. It is possible. I think 4 is almost guaranteed. And I think it's possible that Penix goes, someone trades up or trades in, or Minnesota's sitting there going, well, we didn't get JJ and we still need a quarterback. And this guy looks pretty darn good in purple already. Let's bring him in. And then you start to kind of do the counting. There's 3 wide receivers. Rome's going. Malik's going, and Marvin Harrison Jr. is going. That. Adam, you said earlier, Brock Bowers ain't getting to us. He may, but I don't think he will either. I think someone will just be superly attracted to like, okay, that's the freak. We got to go get that guy. He's the playmaker. So right there, if that were to happen, you got 9 players off the board, or 9 teams that haven't touched offensive line yet. I start to like how that stacks up for us guys. There's that stretch. Right. Correct. There's that stretch right before us. It's like Raiders, Saints, and I have some big fears that some of those great offensive folks will come off the board right before us. But, we can't do anything about that except for maybe trade up a spot or 2 later. But I guess the question is, Brandon, what do you think? Do you think it's 4 QBs? Do you think it's 5? How many non-offensive linemen go before we pick?
Man, I have a hard time thinking that it's going to be more than 4, especially when you pair it kind of in the context of that 2021 draft now, of all those dudes not working out and so many teams looking in that and saying, yeah, we could take a chance on a lot of these guys, but there's a lot of other ways that we can improve our football team and not go a quarterback. So I think that's going to be, with that kind of in the rear view, I think it's probably going to be 4 is pushing it for me.
One of the big advantages that Seattle has over a lot of the quarterback needy teams that are looking to draft quarterbacks, if one does fall to us and we do end up, picking Bo Nix or Penix if he's there, or I don't think McCarthy's going to be there at this point, is that we actually have a legit starter in place so a guy can sit for 2 years. I was listening to Rich Eisen talk about it on his show the other day about, you brought up the 2021 draft class, Brandon, and how these guys got like 1.5 years, 2 years, and then they're out the door.
Yeah,
and you look at these quarterbacks, and there's really only one who's very NFL ready right out of the gate. And I'll kind of hold on to that for later. And then a lot of guys that, while talented, they're going to need a couple years. And for some reason, that has been jettisoned in the NFL just due to impatience. So I think that there's going to be
kind of a fan and media impatience, though.
Yeah,
because I feel like San Fran set themselves up for Trey Lance to come in and be that guy behind Jimmy Garoppolo, and everybody, whether it's media, whether it's fans, or hammering the team saying, hey, we drafted this guy high. What are we doing with Jimmy G? And ends up not working out.
He
just look at Jordan Love.
Couldn't play worth a lick. Well, the opposite, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's, and then you go back in time. It was the norm when we were, growing up, but not even that long ago. It was the norm a decade ago, where the starter got the first round pick, got a year or 2 behind somebody to learn NFL speed or learn NFL concepts. And while that's happening, I feel like the college game has drifted farther away from the NFL game, not closer. And then yes, you could say, okay, well, back then there was the wishbone and all these other things that were exclusively
triple option.
Triple option, Notre Dame stuff like in the 90s. Yes, all true. But it hasn't gotten closer to NFL football except for Michigan. And that's why I think JJ will go quite high. But most of the other offenses they're not NFL offenses. We covered what Kurt Warner said about trying to evaluate these quarterbacks and being like, I got to watch 6 games to get some understanding of if this guy can make NFL throws and go through NFL processing, which is really interesting. So all that to say, maybe there's a bit of a turn where people, but your point though, Adam, is these teams can't even do it. They don't even have it. They don't even have legitimate starters. So what are they going to do? Just throw a season away, right? So that's an interesting point, man.
Yeah, I thought it's not mine. It was something that Rich Eisen brought up, and it got me to thinking, and it really helped me to clarify how I look at college quarterbacks and how I've looked at them over the years. I'd never been able to kind of put it into context of, sure, guy's talented, and yes, in the perfect situation where he could sit and marinate for a few years, like maybe he could be really good, but if he comes in and plays like that in the league, he's going to be gone in a year and a half, and he's going to be the next Sam Darnold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a type of thing. It's so rare to come across. There's usually only one guy every other draft that you can come in as a quarterback and plug and play in an NFL offense. I mean, the Burrows and people of that ilk, Herbert, guys like that they just don't come around that often. And every draft season we get sucked into this quarterback conversation, and every guy's the next Joe Montana, John Elway, Johnny Unitas, and they're going to be the next Mahomes. And it's like, nope, that's not going to happen. It's just not.
One more point I want to make on that. So I think it's a really interesting topic is, okay, if an 18-year-old goes directly to the NBA, sometimes they could play right away. Obviously some of the greats did. And then when they come out of college at 2021, there's 5 dudes on the court, different game. In that way, simpler. And that one guy can typically transition as a rookie and play right away, usually. The NHL, it's very rare, extremely rare for a rookie, 18, 19, 20, to not have to make his way through the AHL and that farm system. Baseball, it's extraordinarily rare that they don't have to go through single A, double A, triple A, and then hit the big leagues. And the NFL, with the quarterback, it being an extreme of all those games, NFL quarterbacking is the most complex. Because in baseball, for a part of the game, you're trying to hit the ball, you're doing one single thing, and that's a very hard thing. And then another part of the game, you're trying to receive the ball and stop runs. It's very, very compartmentalized, right? NFL quarterback, it every second changes. It's the most dynamic thing. You have to have so much knowledge and so much processing power, and yet the expectation is for these first rounders to play right away. But if you look at other sports stars, they get years in farm systems. That's pretty insane. It's just I think it's an interesting thing to
when you look at it from that perspective. It is interesting that we even have that expectation, right? And with the and where does that expectation even come from? Because how often do you have guys who come in and have success right away? It's almost never happens.
It almost never happens. But when they do, they're generally almost a superstar out of the gate, right?
Yeah. And I think that's what we all want. And so maybe we just want to know right away, is he that guy? Is he a guy that can come in and be a superstar right away?
I think there's a paradox at work here too. So a lot of these guys, these teams, they trade up, and they get rid of a couple firsts to get up into that spot to go get their guy and all of that. And it's like, well, if you're willing to put out all that capital for that guy, wouldn't you want to put him in the best situation to succeed and at least sit him for the first half of a season? I mean, my goodness, if he blows your starter out of the water every day in practice, then fine. He played his way onto the field. Great. But otherwise, give him the Jordan Love experience. Give him at least a Mahomes year sitting behind a true professional and Alex Smith. But then you gave up all this draft capital to get this guy. Well, get him out on the field. Like, let's win some games. Let's go. And I think it's that the cost that is associated with the quarterback, because all of them are the vast majority of them are overdrafted. The vast majority. In like, for example, there's a couple guys that should definitely go in the second in this draft. They're definitely getting drafted in the first round. And it's just out of QB desperation.
And it's
QB
not
desperation and a little bit of the contract help that comes along with having 5th-year options in the first round, I suppose.
That's true.
Definitely a factor. And it's not like bad mouthing the philosophy that you're saying, Adam. I think it's just like the stats prove that out. Like that's they look at the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. I think Brett Coleman tweeted that thing about the 21 draft class. It's like the 3 of them are traded. They're gone. Like literally traded from their team in 2 seasons. After 2 seasons, it's just insane. So, or 3 seasons. But either way, it's that the impatience is real. It's at a frothy pitch. We had a YouTube commenter the other week say, "I give the new coach 6 games." And I wrote back like I was like, wait, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you give them 6 games? Like, please clarify your meaning here. Like, basically 1/3 of a season is now the barometer for a
That's how you
brand new.
know. That's how you know whether or not he's going to be a good coach or a bad coach.
Must be right. Must be right. In that world, Andy Reid never ever won a Super Bowl. Right? Probably never even sniffed a playoff game.
Bill Belichick was washed after 6 games.
Right. And Pete Carroll, for that matter. Right.
Yeah.
So it's
multiply that by like 8 to 10, and now you're getting close to
right
3 years
seasons.
Yeah,
correct seasons to put your system in place, get your guys, and that will be the big thing. How quickly, without the judgment on it, but literally for us as fans, how quickly can Macdonald get his base, get his floor, and feel like this is his home? That'll be super interesting. And which players that we picked up this whole offseason and are about to draft are the catalysts, and which ones are the detractors? It's just a fascinating season, guys. I'm fired up.
It's going to be a fun off season to watch, and they still have more to do potentially in free agency. I mean, we got these months leading up to the draft. There's also that time after the draft that they can continue to make some moves. I'd still like to see a veteran come in on the offensive line. It's just, when I look at and it would be fine if they draft a dude who's a guard or maybe a couple guards, or maybe they need to draft a tackle and move a guy into guard. We'll have to see. But I just start to think too, all that youth on the offensive line. I think that while it may prove to be beneficial down the road, I struggle to see us having a good season with a ton of youth, especially in the interior. But there's a long way to go. And Dalton Risner's out there, isn't he? Or did he go to the Vikings?
Thought he was still out there as of like yesterday.
He might still be out there, but not that he's all that great. But it's just,
I was gonna say Denver fans don't have any love lost for him.
No, but he might be an upgrade over
Bradford,
or Antrim,
whoever he is, yeah.
So we'll see. Well, a big thanks to everybody who tuned in live here on this Wednesday. And we're going to shoot for Thursday night live episodes going forward. So, but we'll see how that works out for next week. Our Ryan 911 coming in here before we get on out of here. If we aren't good, and I think we will be, I will judge my success based on how we react to things. I want to see us react and adjust, even if we don't have the roster we need yet. I like that.
Yeah, it's a great point, because we would get on the previous team, and specifically Clint Hurt, the second half adjustments. Like there were just times where it's like, okay, we look good in the first half. Like we're up 10-3, we're up 13-6, and the second half we didn't move. Like nothing worked. And so it's a great point by Ryan there. That'll be interesting. Oh, fellas, we're getting close, guys. This is March 20. Yeah.
See for me, like I don't even care about game to game so much. What I want by the end of the season is to look at what Mike has done and be like, I see the vision, I see where we're going, and it's something I can buy into. Like even if there's a fair amount of failure along the way as they're getting there, like if you can feel it and you know it and you can see it coming, that's all I'm looking for.
The thing I like about the 6 games comment is that it's honest. And because I think that there's many of us who after 6 games, we're probably going to have an opinion, whether or not we feel that this is going in the right or the wrong direction. So in that respect, it's probably not wrong. But we have to, I think, all tell ourselves that 6 games, not enough to make a complete decision as much as we might want to be.
I think a cool barometer could be if mid-season we extend one of these 1-year guys. because that puts you in a pickle next year too. It's like, okay, we got 2 linebackers on a 1-year deal. All right, what if they're good? That's a good problem to go solve, but wouldn't it be delightful if we have to go extend 1 or 2 of them mid-year and be like, you know what? This is the next Nuosu. We got a guy on the upside, and in this case, pretty darn cheap. But that'll be interesting. Or if we're 6 to 7 to 8 weeks in, I don't think it'll be a Macdonald thing, but in 6 to 7 weeks, it'd be like, oh, he ain't it. Like that middle of the field is still a problem. Like, we're not going to go anywhere this year. We can't, we just can't get over the hump with that middle of the field. That I think will be really evident 6 to 7 to 8 in. And then the discussion will be, well, what happened this offseason? And then who do you point the finger at? And that's probably going to be Schneider, right? So year 1 after Carroll, without Carroll now, he's the man, he's calling the shots. Or it could work out beautifully. So it's such the delta between what's going to happen this year is, I think, the biggest it's been in probably 8 years, maybe 10 plus years. It's pretty interesting.
Not knowing, Clinton, except for everything is going to go very well. We're going to have to re-sign all the dudes because it's going to be a juggernaut of the team. We're going to be leading our division at the end of the year, bringing home a division title, have a strong showing in the playoffs, and it's all going to be perfect, right, Brandon?
And I think with that,
there's only one thing left to say.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.